Well, hey everybody, Doug Rucker here with DougRuckerSchool.com and DougRuckerStore.com. Hey, it's been a minute since I had a video, but actually I want to start a series on how you guys can plumb, set up your equipment on your own trailer or truck rig. We do a lot of shipping of equipment to guys that want to build their own system, put it all together, because it saves them some money versus us building it and having to ship out all that. You know, if it's on a skid or on a trailer or in a van or whatever, we still have people that do that. But I just kind of wanted to go over plumbing, setting up hose reels, that kind of thing. And I'm going to do it in a series so that when guys do this, they can pick and choose the videos as they're setting up their equipment. So we're going to go over that. For pressure washers, how to provide water to it and bypass and all that. So that's coming up next. Okay guys, so the first thing we're talking about is your water inlet to your pressure washer. That's one of the first things that we always plumb. And so I want you just to think of your water inlet. That's how you're feeding the pressure washer with water. So there's really only two different ways that you can do that. One is direct or force feed. The other is gravity feed via a water tank. Direct or force feed is when you're connecting your pressure washer directly to a water hose that's connected to the water supply. So that'd be like the water spigot off of a house or a building. When force feeding, though, you've got to make sure that the water supply is producing more gallon per minute than your machine gallon per minute is. So if you have a 4 gallon per minute machine, you've got to make sure that it's going to produce at least 4 gallons per minute, but you really want more. You can determine this by doing a bucket test and see how long it takes to fill a 5 gallon bucket with water. Now, if your bucket fills up in under a minute, you know that water supply can supply water to at least a 4 gallon per minute and maybe even a 5 gallon per minute if it's filling up in under a minute. But you do need to make sure that your water supply will not be uninterrupted. You got to make sure it's not going to be interrupted by someone else that's using the water supply, like a shower, a clothes washer, dishwasher, things of that nature. In fact, I always look for the main water supply out at the street, follow the pipe where that would go, and that's the water source that I usually hook up. That's usually going to be the best water supply that you can get. Now, gravity feed, that's when you're feeding the pressure washer using a dedicated tank that supplies just the water to your machine. Often you'll hear it referred to as a buffer tank. Now, for pressure washers that are 4 gallon per minute and below, your pressure washer can usually be force fed. If it's 4 gallon per minute and above and is a belt drive or gear drive, then you can gravity feed it if you wanted to. In fact, any machine 5 gallons per minute and higher, whether it's belt or gear drive, I always recommend gravity feeding it via a tank. When gravity feeding, you can have the unloader bypass water back to the tank. When you're not using the machine, or you're on the trigger, as we say, this allows you to be off the trigger to a longer time than a machine that is being force fed. Sorry about getting tongue-tied here. Bypassing, that basically prevents the water heating up inside the pump that could cause damage, because the water is continually recirculating through the pump. Force-fed machines have a small loop off the unloader that the water recirculates through, and you need to make sure you are off the trigger no longer than 1 minute. The machine will have a high temp valve that will release water if it gets too hot, and sometimes these can be reset. It just depends on what kind you have, but most often you just need to replace it if you see water coming out of it. Now, water coming out means it was activated due to the high temperature of the water, and you won't really do any damage to it if you continue to use water coming out, but you just want to replace it whenever you get a chance. So let's talk about actually plumbing and show you how we do that on an actual machine. All right, so most of you remember the Cocoa rig that we built several weeks ago, and so I'm going to use it, and then we also have another one that's very similar to it that we're building for a customer that we'll pick up next week. But this has an 8-gallon per minute machine, and this one over here actually has a 5-gallon per minute gear drive machine, so you'll get to see both of them. But they're both going to be plumbed pretty much the same way, just the exception is different hose sizes for different gallon per minute. And when I'm talking about hose sizes, I'm talking about inlet water hose as well as bypass hose. So you really only have a couple of things to do when you're plumbing for the pressure washer. And the first is you're going to provide water from the tank. And so what we're using here, because this is an 8-gallon per minute machine, is a 1-inch bulkhead and then a 1-inch by 1-inch 90 threaded hose barb. And so the bulkhead goes into the tank. We drill a hole that's the size that we need for the bulkhead. And then we have the hose barb. We heat the hose up with a blow gun that's kind of like it's a heat gun. And we don't want to overheat the hose. We just want to get it soft and pliable, and then soap up the barb with soapy water, and it'll slide right on, and then hose clamp it. And so that goes to the pressure washer. And here is the water inlet hose feeding the pressure washer at the water inlet right here. And so what we do is we supply, sell, offer a water inlet modification. And what we do is we have banjo quick connects, so this will come off and you can take this hose off and it will actually lay down to fill up a 5-gallon bucket or easily empty the water tank. This prevents having to have another hose, you know, if you just want to drain the water tank. But you want to make sure that the machine, of course, is not running when you do this. You don't want to disconnect it while the machine is running. Okay, so that's connected to the water inlet modification, and then here we have a brass Y strainer. Those are the ones I've been using for years, and they work great. They've got a little nut down here that you can take off to clean it out very easily. And then, of course, it's connected to a threaded hose barb. So, well, not a threaded hose barb, that's a threaded piece that goes into the machine. But sometimes we have done it with a threaded hose barb. We just have to reconfigure it a little bit. So that's your water inlet. So it's basically a, where did it go? 1-inch bulkhead, and then the right size banjo threaded hose barb for the hose, and then we have actually 1-inch crust-proof hose that is feeding the machine. Hey guys, real quick before we get back into the video, don't forget that coming up June 20th through the 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia, we'll be doing our hands-on training. I'll teach you how to clean a building, how to clean a roof, concrete, property protection, all of that. That's going to be on June 20th. June 21st will be parking lot striping training with Jeffrey Blackman. And then you'll actually be able to be in a parking lot, do some striping on your own, use the equipment, stencils, all of that kind of thing. And then June 22nd is a Saturday. That's the Difference Makers Conference. That's the business conference where we don't talk anything about pressure washing you know, cleaning and all of that. This is more about the business end of your business, how you can price your jobs, know what to charge. We'll talk about money matters, commercial property, how to work with property managers, all of that kind of stuff. High-end residential sales, things like that. So you don't want to miss that. We're doing that on a Saturday this time, so that hopefully more people can join that Difference Makers Conference. So that is June 20th to 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia. We'll have a special room rate set up at the Country Inn and Suites right near where everything will take place. So don't forget that. And then, of course, April 8th and 9th, May 13th and 14th, and then I believe it's June 10th and 11th. Those are all our next hands-on training right here in Houston, Texas. So if you can join that or want to use that, come on out. Be glad to have you. And then also the online video school, don't forget about that. Over 250 videos. It will drastically help you cut your learning curve. That thing has been up for about 10 or 12 years, constantly updating it with new videos. So don't forget about the online school video as well. Lots of training opportunities coming up. Now the other thing that you'll need to plumb is a bypass hose off of the unloader, and your unloader will actually tell you which side is for bypass and which side is for water inlet. And so this is coming off the bypass side, and that goes from there and it goes to the water tank right here. And we're using a uniseal, and this hose just sticks through about an inch, 2 inches, whatever you want. And we always put that kind of far away from where the water inlet is, which is over here, because we don't want turbulence to be created if the tank gets really low for water. So we always kind of separate those two. We don't want them right next to each other. So that's for a 8 gallon per minute machine. That's 1/2 inch hose going through a uniseal that goes back to here. The unloader, which will have bypass marked on it. I think I said in the previous video water inlet and bypass. It's actually water outlet that would be marked on the unloader. So this is the water out. So that's going to either the hose reel, or you can direct connect your pressure hose if you don't have a hose reel or whatever. In this case, it's directed to the Flow Pro bypass system, and we'll do another video on hooking those up. And then the water out hose to the hose reel is going to there. So if you don't have the Flow Pro, then let me show you how it would look. Okay, so now if you don't have the Flow Pro, basically all I've done is disconnected the water outlet hose to the Flow Pro, and I've direct connected the water or the whip line hose that goes from the top, which is the water outlet off the unloader, and there's a whip hose that's going to the hose reel right there. So when you fire the machine up, the water is going to come through this hose and supply water to your hose reel, if you want to plumb it to the hose reel. If not, then you just direct connect here with your pressure hose, or direct connect to the whip line, whichever way you prefer. Okay, so this is the 5 gallon per minute machine, and everything is basically pretty much the same. 5 gallon per minute machines will feed with either 1 inch hose or 3/4 inch, either way. So you've got the bulkhead down here, just like we talked about. And if you were using a 3/4 hose to feed the pressure washer, then you'd use a 3/4 bulkhead with a 3/4 by 3/4 threaded to barb banjo fitting. And so that hose is going up again to the water inlet modification. So they'll be able to disconnect this and drain water, fill up a 5 gallon bucket, whatever they need to. And then this is 3/8 clear braid hose that's going back to the water tank, and we actually used a bulkhead fitting. You can do that if you wanted to for the bypass. So you can either use the uniseal like I showed you on the 8 gallon per minute, or you can use a bulkhead fitting with a 90 fitting up there. So that's a 1/2 inch to a 3/8 hose barb fitting for the 3/8 hose. Okay, so that's the basics of setting up your pressure washer and plumbing. I think I've pretty much covered everything that you need to know. Again, it's just water inlet to the pressure washer. So going from a bulkhead at the bottom of the tank to the pressure washer. And this is a gear drive machine, so it will suck the water like a belt drive will. It's just direct drive that I always recommend you force feeding. They're just kind of spotty as to whether the machine will pull water. Belt drive and gear drive machines will always pull water. They create a vacuum so it can suck the water in through the machine. All right, guys. Hey, I hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, just let me know. Don't forget the training opportunities we talked about before. April, May, and June, we've got hands-on training here in Houston, Texas. And then June 20th through 22nd, Atlanta, Georgia. Here we come, man. We can't wait for that. Jeffrey and I are super stoked to go to Atlanta. And then, of course, the online video school. Hey, thanks for watching again. I hope it's been very helpful for you. And click that like button, hit that subscribe, all that kind of stuff that we ask you to do. Hit the bell for notifications because I'm going to have more videos coming out like this that will help you be able to build your own rig. So thanks again, and y'all have a very, very blessed day.
Hey, this is Carlos from Atlanta, and I can't even begin to tell you what an amazing experience we had at this conference.
But as Jeff was saying a while ago, it all starts with a vision.
It's not high pressure. So I can actually turn it down lower and close it.
Show y'all before I go back in and do the marking part. This machine right here is what's called your Graco, your Titan 3500. And that is your Graco laser line 3400.